All right. Good morning, everyone. For those of you that are watching this back, or those of you that will be joining us, I've got Rich Szerman with me today, and we are going to be talking about building strategic partnerships to create your real estate network. And so we all know that real estate is a people business, it's a relationship business. And so creating those partnerships is essential to not just growing your business, but also having the resources and supportive network that one needs to do business well. And so I've got Rich here with me. And so he's going to go ahead and just to begin with, Rich, I kind of want you to um, let me take a step back. You've had a very successful and continue to have a very successful career in real estate. And so when you were first starting out, what was kind of the thought process for you in terms of building your real estate network? How did you kind of approach that to begin with, and how has that changed and evolved over time?
Oh boy, has it changed! I started my career 30 plus years ago, so it's yeah, like pre-internet. We used to run around with carbon, copies of things. Um, well, I first got into this. I was 19 when I first got into the business, and my mother was already a realtor, and she had a couple of foreclosure accounts, which was really what drew me into it. That because she made me, but I was kind of overwhelmed because the only introduction I got was here are a couple of files, go out to them if they want to buy a house. That was kind of it. That was the extent of my training. So I had to figure everything out kind of on my own. And what I found was there were these wonderful people around who were like at escrow and at title and the lender and all these other people who were wonderful resources if you just sat down and talked to them about it. And so
Mhm.
whenever something came up, I would just get a hold of them very quickly, and then I would largely parrot what they told me. And before I knew it, I already thought I knew what I was talking about. And that part of it really hasn't changed. And really, the fundamental thing there, and I got this from a former broker I worked for in 1990,
Mhm.
who told me, or 91 anyway, who said that if you're smart, treat your affiliates, the people you're talking to, treat them as a resource, but more importantly, treat them as if they were clients because you're going to need them. And if you tell them that, and if you treat them well, rather than expecting things from them all the time, you don't always just call them because you need something. Call them
Mhm.
just to say hi. Call them to offer to go something, that kind of thing. Still a lot more face-to-face networking those days, obviously. But that kind of thing made it sort of built a network by itself. Because, like for example, to this day, I've got a case I need to work on today where I've got two different probate attorneys telling me two different things. And
Mhm.
I'm very lucky in that I can send off an email to an actual title officer, not just a title rep. Nothing against title reps; they're wonderful, but I can actually go to the source, and in Meyer for Los Angeles County, and say, "Hey, if this came across your desk, what would you do with it?" And he'll give me an answer, which is very nice of him, and then away we go. And that's going to save me hours and hours worth of research. And I don't want to particularly argue with the lawyers anyway, so it's much better off saying, "Hey, this is what title's saying. They're the final arbiter here. This is what they're saying." Um, Stuff like that. Same thing with escrows. I get a lot of very complicated files because I do a lot of default servicing stuff. So a lot of stuff with the IRS, a lot of stuff with the Franchise Tax Board, defaulted loans, that sort of thing. So we spend a lot of time fixing those, and having a team, including escrow and title and the lender and an assessor and and contractors galore. Having a team like that together is absolutely key to being successful. And I rely on those people because I sort of use them as my network. Like my carpet guy just sent me somebody yesterday, and I expect him to do that. And I tell people that I'll be happy to, let's do this. I'm hiring you because you're great, doing great at carpet, and your prices are good. That's why we're hiring you. But once we get working a little bit, hey, if you come across anybody, by the way, that kind of thing. And they also know that the more clients they feed me, the more business I feed them, and so it all kind of builds on itself. So yeah, treat them. Don't treat affiliates like they work for you. Treat them like their clients. You always do well with that. Same thing with receptionists. Any building any company you have to deal with, be nice to the receptionist because they're the gatekeepers always. So it's really kind of basic stuff. It's not none of that's all that earth shattering. It's just people forget to do it, especially in our business because the numbers get as large as they can be. You're selling $1 million house and you're getting a 3% commission. It's a $30,000 commission right off the bat, and your title rep may not be making that much this month. So and yet they're the ones who are taking you out to lunch, which doesn't seem right to me. So, and also be careful who you saddle up with because you will take on an element of their reputation and they'll take on an element of yours. So just be careful with that because I've had that come back to sting me every so often over the years. But it's been a long career. Anyway, sorry, that was a long answer to a short.
No, absolutely. That's exactly what the kind of answer I was looking for. And you mentioned that you had reached out to two different probate attorneys and they gave you two different answers.
Mm-hmm.
If there's, conflicting, if there's conflicting opinions or conflicts of interest between, your business or potential strategic partners, how do you kind of navigate that sort of conflict to generate the best outcome?
Well, in that particular, you go to the final arbiter. You go to the end of the line if you can. In that particular case, there's a disagreement between the attorneys as to whether somebody who is the administrator of the trust needs to, in order to take a property, does the property have to come out of the trust in order for it to be sold, coming out of a probate, or can it be sold through the probate? And the answer to that question, you can sell through the probate, I know that, but what is the mechanics to make that happen? And that's really where the difference lies, because one thinks it'd be easier to do it one way, one thinks it's easier to do the other. Well, ultimately, in Los Angeles County anyway, the title companies are going to be the ultimate arbiter of that, because they're the ones who have to guarantee the chain of title. So go to a title officer in this case, because again, they're the ultimate arbiter of this. So you go to the title officer, not just the rep, but the actual officer who may be signing off on this, and you say, "This is what I got. What do you think?" Which, I mean, I know either way will work, but if this came across your desk, and it may, how would you best like to see it? How is it easiest to adjust for you? Because you got, I mean, the assessor's office isn't going to argue the title company, not in Los Angeles, not usually, because the title company is the one who's insuring it. So how do you feel this works best? And he'll tell me, and then I'll go back to both attorneys and I'll say, this is what I'm being told. I think this is what we should do. And that sort of solves the problem. That way nobody has to get their ego bruised or anything else, because I'm going to the same people they're going to have to go to. The difference is, because I have those relationships in place, I'm able to go directly to a title officer. Because when I talked to the title rep years ago and I said, "Hey, who's the title officer on this?" And they told me, I said, "Hey, can I meet him?" And they said yes. And I think I sent him a box of cookies, was about it. He doesn't come out of his office much. But you would have thought that I was the second coming, because nobody ever does anything nice for title officers like that. The fact that I sent him a box of cookies was a big deal to him. So it was, $25 in a delivery fee to me. He thought it was great. So I wouldn't say that out loud, except I tease him about it, so he's aware of this. And now I have to send him a box of cookies every Christmas, which is a whole other thing. It's a form of extortion, but I'm good with
it. that's both very sweet, but also does make me a little bit sad that title officers.
Well, in fairness, I have a friend of mine who owns a bakery here in town in Valencia, and I wish he'd expand, but his cookies are really something special, and I use them. I make no bones about it. I use his cookies to get me places. I just do, because if I want to get to talk to a title officer, I'll send him a box of cookies, and suddenly he's returning my calls. It's honestly stuff like that. And whether he return my calls or not, he's not going to dislike me for sending him a box of cookies. So, and I don't try to be smarmy about it. I tell him flat out, I am bribing you with cookies because I would like you to take my calls. If you can, if you can't, that's fine too. Enjoy the cookies. But if you can, there might be more where that came from. That kind of thing. I just sort of make a joke out of it, because I don't think people in those positions, if you can find people in positions, especially positions of authority, although the same applies to receptionists, who don't usually get treated very well, when you treat them well at all, they give you, frankly, a lot more credit than you're due for the very small gesture you've performed. And plus, it's just, I mean, who doesn't like cookies? Why not? Or whatever it is.
I like cookies, Rich. Where's my box?
Yeah, well, I don't have your address in Chicago. We'll look that up. We're having a shipping issue with Devar at the moment, because they've been coming up crumbled. So that's a whole other subject. Anyway, different room for that. No, really, that's it. As far as strategic partnership, whatever you're doing, and it always comes down to this for me: just treat them like a client. And I don't mean in the smarmy sort of, used Honest John's used car way. I mean, legitimately treat them as a client and tell them, this is what I do. If you have need of my services, please let me know. One of the agents who works for us here at Radius, who works in my office, named Marcella, she walks up to people blind all the time, like she's a little kid lost at the fair, and she just walks up to them and says, "Hi, I'm Marcella, and I sell real estate." And she goes, and I've never seen anything like it. She's spectacular at this. I tease her all the time. Nowhere in the town that we're in Northern Lake County here in Valencia, there should never be a meeting of more than 4 people that Marcella is not part of, because she just does that, and she does it naturally. I envy her in that. For me, it's a lot harder. I have to feel a little more purposeful about it. But there are some of those people who just can network naturally, and if you're one of those people, God bless, but use that. But even if you're not, like me, I don't do that really naturally, but you can still find a way to do it. And if you're going to be clumsy about it, just lean in. Here's a box of cookies, because I don't know how to do this. I'm going to be clumsy about it. But they're really good cookies. And yes, I'm sending them to you because I would like to talk to you about title in the future. Just remember, I'm the guy who sent you the cookies, or whatever it is. You don't have to be as clumsy about it as I am. But that's kind of the recipe. There's not much to it for me. I sort of Forrest Gump my way into these things, and then at some point they become useful.
I was going to ask if do you think that it's better to have this as kind of is it a self-taught skill, or is it something that people just have sort of naturally? But I think for you, you've still somehow managed to navigate it despite, not perceiving yourself as having that natural skill.
Well, and I think that that's a skill set. And so my wife likes to say that I found a way to take my less attractive personality traits and make them work for me. And yeah, that's it. I mean, I don't play. I use Marcella as an example all the time because she's such an extrovert, and I really envy that. And for those of us who really aren't that and kind of have to become that because the job requires it from time to time, I always fall back on the fact that I hopefully know what I'm talking about. I mean, whatever property we're dealing with, I will know the comparables cold. I'll know exactly what's going on because even if my personality doesn't get the job done, I have the data to go back to, and that's got to be the foundation of everything I do. And the same thing is true with my relationships with affiliates. I don't come to them with my hand out. I don't come to them unless it's purposeful, other than to send cookies and say hi once a year, birthdays and Christmas, that kind of thing, just to keep those relationships good, and let them know we're thinking about them. But when I come to them, it's for a client.
Yeah.
I need this not just because it's a trial balloon or not because I got something else going on. It is for a client. And if I need something monetarily, I need it for the client. I don't need it for me. I don't take kickbacks. I don't like payoffs. I don't want anything to do with any of that. I know it's right. Our industry is rife with that. I'm not judging anybody else. I'm just saying I don't do that. I've never found that to be a positive aspect of my business. I don't know how it is for other people. It's just not how I do things. Although I will bribe people with cookies, I cop to that. But which actually entirely you're not supposed to do these days. That's the whole other story. Title reps are not allowed to send you cookies. Anyway, it's a part of insurance. Take it very seriously. But anyway, no, I've just sort of found a way that works for me. And no matter who you are, if you don't have that gene, that extrovert gene, you can still make it work. You just have to, there comes a point at which you have to be authentic enough that people understand that you're not necessarily good at this. And most people, if you tell them that, will be fine with it because they would much rather have the truth from their counsel than anything else. They don't need me to be their pal. They don't need me to take long walks on the beach with them. They need me to know what I'm doing. And the rest you can fill in.
Did you end up finding them just by like searching them up? Did you do your research beforehand, or are these people that you met organically through different events and just the circuit in general?
It's a combination of things. But what I'll typically do, like if I'm looking, like if I need to change an affiliate for whatever reason, we usually have a primary and a backup so that you kind of have these things set up. And if, for example, I need a new whatever, I'm looking for a roofer right now, for example, because my old roofer had the bad taste to retire without taking my needs into account at all. So I'm looking for a roofer right now as it happens. And so I went to the Chamber of Commerce. And I said, who do you recommend? I went to the Board of Realtors. I said, who do you recommend? And I went to my clients. I sent out an email, big email blast to all my clients. And I said, hey, I'm looking for a roofer. Do you have had a good experience in the last 12 months? Or are you related to somebody? What do you got? And we got a couple of people through that. And so what we'll do is we'll generate a list, and I'll usually go visit them on a job site or something, usually one or two of them. And it's not a beauty contest. I'm not picking a winner. I'm just kind of going to see what they're doing. And then when we have call, because we do, I'll call one or two of them up and I'll say, hey, please go bid this job. And just like anything else, just the way you go. But those relationships have to be built slowly over time, both for them and for you. But you gotta start somewhere. I mean, I would say in my town anyway, things like Angie's List are useless. They're horrible. Same thing with most of the rating agencies and things like that out there. The Yelps and things are usually not all that useful. Great for restaurants, horrible for our industry. So just go and meet them. Go talk to them. I mean, if you have an escrow officer who doesn't leave their desk, which is most escrow officers I know, just go meet them. Go sit down across the desk from them if you can. If you can't do it, schedule a Zoom meeting just to say hi to them for 5 minutes. You'll know pretty quickly, and especially if you start working with them, you'll know. I mean, the best way is to do a transaction with them, but you'll know very, very quickly whether they're doing the job well or not. I find with affiliates especially, the good ones are very, very good, and we're blessed to have them. They hopefully hang out a very long time, and the bad ones aren't around for very long. The industry does have a way. There are exceptions, I'm sure, but the industry does have a way of washing out those who really, are not a benefit to the people around them.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I think, like I said, a lot of this is just basic relationship building, nurturing those relationships and fostering them over time. Do you send any like, I know you send out cookies. That point we've come back to that a few we've come back to that a few times, and I'm wondering, is there anything else that you do? Do you send out handwritten notes? Do you have cards that you're circulating? Anything like that? Anything that requires
No, not really. I just mostly for me, it's by email. I wish we email a lot because what they want more than anything from me is they want me to send them business. And they want me to send them, they want me to become part of their income stream. That's what they want. They want me to do for them what I've asked them to do for me. And that's the other big thing. I am always more than happy to produce for an affiliate before I expect an affiliate to produce for me. I don't go to, my escrow company on the first transaction we're done with them and asking for a discount. I wouldn't do that. Although I've had situations where kind of had no choice, but it's pretty rare though. But I expect to build up a book of business with them. And I tell affiliates flat out, I want to be number one on your dance card. And I understand I have to work to that position. So when I'm sending you the most amount of business of all the other realtors you're dealing with, or at least let's say top 10, hopefully, then that'll be great. And, I'm not saying I expect anything in return except that you do your job well, and then you hopefully make some time for me when I need some time from you. But I really try to keep the extraneous stuff to an absolute. I mean, Christmas and stuff, obviously it's different. We go a little nuts because these are people who you've made money for and who made money for you over the years. I do have personal relationships with most of them, if not all of them. So it is fun to kind of do that. Our Christmas lunches tend to be a lot of fun as a result. But and it's kind of fun to do that kind of stuff. But it's really for me, it's just emails. It's just send them business. And if you're not sending a business, just reach out to them to say hi, because you just got to kind of stay in front of them more than anything else. And the best way to do that is to make them money. I mean, you send a bunch of escrows to the same escrow officer, and you will be very, very popular with that escrow officer. And that applies to roofers as well. I find the biggest problem that realtors have with affiliates, things like this, is they tend to get a little over their skis about it. They tend to oversell themselves. This is the great stuff I'm going to be able to do for you. Well, I do a decent chunk of business. We do about 1 to 2 roofs a year. So if I were to say to the roofer, I'm going to send you a dozen deals next month, please pay attention to me. He'll pay attention to me. And then if I don't do that, he's going to think he's going to stop paying attention to me and think I'm really annoying because I didn't deliver on what I told him I would. So I tell him we do 1 or 2 a year. And if we do more than that, great. But there's no reason to, overinflate expectations. And it's also not necessary. Most roofers, I'm on the roofer thing, but most roofers are going to do one roof for one house every somewhere between 10 to 50 years. So they're constantly looking for new business. And that's what we represent. We represent a source of business.
Absolutely.
So whether it's a lot or a little is different, but that's what we represent.
No, I like your approach to this. It's no muss, no fluff. It's just simple, honest, straightforward. And I think that's what we tend to do in this business, is that we tend to overcomplicate things a little bit. And
I try to make myself useful to them because I expect them to be useful to me.
Mhm.
And if we can be friends beside, great. That's the gold standard. That's wonderful. But that's not a necessary component. If that happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I just want to be good at their job. That's all. And I expect them to hold me to the same standard. But that's really the point. Yeah, there's a hierarchy to the business that I think it's out of hand most of the time. As the realtor, you're the hub of the wheel. Everybody comes to you. It's your job. You're the director of the film. It's your job to make it work right. And we're privileged to be in that position. We also tend to make more money per deal than most of the other affiliates involved. But I think you need to be cognizant of that. I have a lender friend of mine who, for us to make the same amount per year, he has to do about 3 to 4 deals to my one. I like my side of the fence much better than his. But he's also got a much larger database than I do, a much larger client base than I do. So, but respect the people that you're dealing with, what they're going through. It's not this. It's never going to be as important to most affiliates that this $2 million escrow close as it is to you, because you have more money invested. You probably have more time invested. You're also the one with a much more personal relationship with the clients in most cases. So it's always going to be more personal to you. So if it's not to them, don't get bent out of shape about it. Just understand that's where they're coming from. And if they're not doing their job well, then fine, you move on to find somebody else. I mean, hopefully that's not the case. But I find, because I've been doing this as long as I have, I try to keep it very, very straightforward, very simple for all concerned. And if something better comes out of that, great, so much the better. But that's not the goal necessarily.
Absolutely. And I know we are just about time. And so I just wanted to say thank you. I have another meeting that I have to jump for. Otherwise I could keep talking about this for a while, but I think we pretty much covered everything that there is to cover about this, because it's, like you said, it's a pretty straightforward thing. It's just making sure that consistency and keeping and maintaining that honesty and transparency and staying in front of them and treating them as if they were a client, and giving them that respect accordingly is really the main key takeaways from this. And so, yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for your time.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime. Happy to help.
Absolutely. You are the absolute best. And I can't say that enough. And so,
Really
again, thank you so much for your time today. We hope to get this up on social in the coming days, maybe next week. We'll have to see what our social media manager has planned content wise. But once again, thank you so much for your time. And I will
My pleasure. Enjoy Chicago. I'll talk to you later.
Enjoy. Thank you so much. I'll be waiting on those cookies.
Yeah. Give me an address. I'll send them.
Sounds good.
Later.
Take care. Bye-bye.